Hey, what's going on guys, my name is Proto and today I'm going to be going over a $1,500 build. This was a highly requested build video from you guys and it'd be great if you're really serious about gaming, video editing and live streaming. And in terms of performance in general, this isn't far off from what I use, but I've also included a $1,350 system, with just a few minor adjustments but really similar components. And last year's build, like all of my other US builds, doesn't include rebates, and so that over, let's get into it. And so starting off with the CPU, I've got the Intel Core i7 5820K coming at $30 more than the i7 Skylake, being $370. And this is a true 6-core CPU with hyperthreading, and what that means is that it can more efficiently use all of these cores, and so you do end up having 12 threads. Recently it was tested that it's not the same as having 12 cores, but the difference between hyperthreading versus none is still really significant. Also, because this is an Intel chip, means it has really great IPC and has a core clock of 3.3 GHz and a boost of 3.6 GHz. For many that'll actually seem quite low, and you know what? You're somewhat right. Not overclocked, a CPU like the i5 4690K or the i7 4790K will outperform it in gaming because of the higher clock speed, but don't forget this is an overclockable chip and it's a great one on top of that. Most people, including myself, have managed to get this up to 4.4 to 4.6 GHz at reasonable temperatures, and with that in mind, the CPU is an absolute killer. Not only that, but it's also on the X99 platform, which just gives you an idea of how enthusiast it is. Like seriously, the CPU is absolute overkill for gaming. Quite honestly, I don't recommend it if you're just gaming, but take it into video editing or live streaming and you'll know just what you've been missing out on. This chip does tear through anything you can toss at it, and it's great value for money, as you can save tons by overclocking it and not going with the 5930K, even though I get it, the 5930K does have more lanes. And now for the CPU cooler. Now for this we've got the CRYORIG R1 Ultimate costing us $90. This is a tank of a CPU cooler, meaning that can push really high clock speeds at low temperatures, and it's pretty much a walk in the park. I am going to mention that this is a really big cooler though, and in terms of performance, it's actually around the same as dissipating heat as the Corsair H100i liquid cooler. So when you're grinding away at that render, the temps will be roughly the same. However, with that said, the noise levels will be a lot lower than the H100i. That, and it's actually more reliable because you don't have to worry about the pump failing. The heatsink itself has no moving parts, of course, and if you didn't know, this CPU that we're using doesn't actually come with a stock cooler. So I went with one that's very top end of air coolers, and personally, this is the one that I plan to put in my rig in the future. Now for the motherboard, it's the Gigabyte G8 X99M Gaming 5 Micro ATX LGA 2011-3 motherboard, costing us $154. And yeah, I know it's Micro ATX. I could have gone with a regular ATX size board, but not only does this look cooler, but most people won't actually utilize the extra PCIe slots. If you do, you still have more than enough for multi-GPU configs if you did want to. Not only that, but it's also the cheapest X99 board I've found. But yeah, this board does only have 4 memory slots, supporting up to DDR4 2800 MHz. I know that a lot of X99 boards do have 8 slots, but I'll get more into that in a minute. And it also supports XMP for you RAM overclockers, and the BIOS in this is so freaking sweet. It also has a really high quality audio controller, meaning that you don't need a separate sound card. And in terms of PCIe, it has a total of 3 full-length X16 slots and a single X1 slot for something like a Wi-Fi card, capture card, etc. You know what I'm on about. Not only that, but it also supports NVIDIA SLI or AMD Crossfire for multi-GPU configs, and comes with a lot of software such as Easy Tune automatic overclocking, Fast Boot, Smart Time Lock, and more. Now for storage, you have one M.2 PCIe connector, one SATA Express, and 6 6GB per second SATA ports. It also has RAID support, supporting RAID 0, 1, 5, and 10, and for back panel you have 4 USB 3.0, 6 USB 2.0, and 2 PS2 ports, as well as killer gaming Ethernet, optical out, 5 optical ports, and a Wi-Fi antenna connector hole. All in all, this is a really great motherboard, especially if you're looking for a cheap one, then this is superb. And now for RAM, we have the Corsair Vengeance LPX 16GB 2GB DDR4 2666 memory, costing us $58. This is a great set of RAM, it looks good with a good speed when overclocked as well, and the module is low profile-ish, sort of kinda, which means that you shouldn't have any problems when you're installing the CPU cooler. And as for why I went with 2 RAM sticks, even though memory on this board is in quad channel, is that whilst it would be a good idea to do quad channel by putting in 4 sticks of RAM, it doesn't actually make any performance difference unless you're running software specifically designed to measure that. So yeah, you shouldn't really notice a difference IRL, and doing this allows you to upgrade in the future if you want to. And now for storage, we've got 2 things. Now I initially went with an M.2 drive, but I realized that disables 2 SATA ports because of the bandwidth, and so I went with 2 SATA drives instead. For the primary drive, I went with the Samsung 850 EVO Series 250GB 2.5-inch solid state drive, costing $85, and then a secondary drive for mass storage, of course, being the Seagate Barracuda 2TB 3.5-inch 7200 RPM internal hard drive, costing us a mere $62. Now for the first, it is an SSD and it's going to be considerably faster than mechanical hard drive and also more reliable, but with one caveat, and that's price per gigabyte. It's certainly gone down, especially in the last few years, but it's still a lot higher than it would be on a mechanical hard drive. Regardless of that, you should be able to load on your whole OS, some games, and then your main programs as well. This just means that everything will just go much quicker. Now the Samsung one is the one that I use and it works great, and now for the secondary drive. Now this was the mechanical one. Now I did look into getting one with more storage, but they were either really expensive or extremely unreliable. I am personally using this one myself to host all of my games, yes, all of them, and it hasn't failed yet, touch wood. This is a great drive, and if you ever need more storage, you can just put another few drives in, and in most cases, this combo will be enough for most people. Now for the GPU, boy this one's great. It's the Gigabyte GeForce GTX 980 4GB Extreme Gaming video card, costing $505. I personally also have an Extreme Gaming card, and yeah, it's certainly one of the best types you can get. This 980 will demolish games at 1080p and deal damage at 1440p. I personally wouldn't go for 4K though, since there's no real single card solution which can handle that, but I definitely recommend either looking at a 1080p 144Hz panel or a 1440p panel. This model has one DVI-D 3 DisplayPort and one HDMI connection, and as for how this performs once overclocked, well, the difference is significant. It's certainly no slouch either, especially with that huge price tag, and you should be able to get around 1500 MHz with no problem, and performance in games you'll see at the end. The card competes with the R9 Fury, but the Fury is cut shy once this card is overclocked, and you also get a bunch of Nvidia technology such as VR, DX12, kinda, Dynamic Super Resolution allowing you to downscale 1440p to 1080p, Nvidia Surround, PhysX, although that's a pointless one though, SLI and CUDA. Now SLI allows you to put multiple of these in one system, whereas CUDA is really helpful in suites like Adobe. It reduces the load on the CPU by number crunching, and quite simply helping render out the video, such as scaling, blurring and more. And then you also have GeForce Experience, and within that, Nvidia Game Stream on Shadowplay. All the gameplay you see on my channel is recorded through Nvidia Shadowplay, and it allows you to record up to 4K at 60 FPS at huge bit rates. Now for me, I record at 1080p 60 FPS, and file sizes at the max bit rates are still super low for what it is. This is a lifesaver, especially since it has that shadow mode, meaning you don't always have to record to capture gameplay. I just want to say that if you do use this build months down the line, you want to include something like Pascal, Polaris GPUs, then you can just replace it instead of the one I'm using now, and you won't have any compatibility issues either. Now for the case, you have the Phanteks N3 ProtoAMP costing $75. I can't tell you how many times I've actually recommended this case. It is an ATX size case with a brushed aluminium look, even though the front is plastic with the rest of it being metal, and it features a side panel window so you can shove all of your components and view them, which in a system like this, which looks absolutely stunning once it's done, I'm not sure why you wouldn't want to. Although the case is ATX, it does have full support for eATX boards if your board extends lengthways and not in height, but then you also get a bunch of other nifty things. It does have dust filters and has room for one 5.25" drive like a fan controller, hot swap caddy, etc, and gives room for 8 3.5" drives and 3 2.5" drives for something like an SSD. This is more than the motherboard itself can offer, but if you use a PCI SATA controller, then you do have the option to add more drives. The case itself does look really clean, especially with the PSU shroud and ample cable management, helping the overall aesthetics. And as standard, you do have USB 3.0 front panel, which is what we've come to expect, so nothing major there. And this brings me on to the PSU. Now for those who've gone with the EVGA Supernova GS 650W, 80 plus gold certified fully modular ATX power supply, costing $80. Now EVGA PSUs are known for reliability, with me even owning one myself, and this one has 4 6+ 2 pin connectors, which is more than you'll need, and the overall system load on this is around 420 watts.
420 vape nation blaze it.
However hard that is to believe. So this will definitely give you enough headroom. The PSU is also gold rated, meaning that it's more power efficient and not to forget modular, so you can choose what cables you connect, and the GS motors are actually made by Seasonic, I believe. Anyway, this is a really great PSU for the price, and it's a lot better than its competitors, again for the price, factoring in reliability. Now onto the benchmarks. I just want to quickly add a disclaimer on that, so I got these from different sources such as BitTech, Anantech, Tom's Hardware, Gamers Nexus and more, and these aren't going to be exactly what you're going to get because of testing methodology, be it drivers, programs running, hardware and more. These are mostly based on the reference 980 because I couldn't find any with the Extreme Edition, and so you can expect at least similar if not higher FPS. And now we're going to move on to the actual games. Now for Fallout 4 on Ultra at 1080p, you can expect around 85 FPS stock. This isn't the action scenes though, so when you're just moving you should get over 100 FPS, and this is with AO set to SSAO, everything set on Ultra, anti-aliasing set to TAA, and anti-isotropic filtering set to 16 samples. With all of the same settings, you can expect around 65 FPS at 1440p as well. And with that we move on to Black Ops 3. Now at 1080p you can expect around 117 FPS with everything set on Ultra, and 72 FPS at 1440p. Again, these are just stock numbers, so overclocking, especially on this card, will go up by quite a bit depending on the game. In Battlefield 4, it's a similar story. We're getting around 108 FPS at 1080p on Ultra, and 74 FPS at 1440p again on Ultra, so higher refresh rates do seem like the way to go for 1080p gaming. As the Rainbow Six Siege, with it set on the high settings, with TAA, HBO+, which absolutely murks the frame rate, and anisotropic filtering set to 16 times, gets 130 FPS at 1080p, and 104 FPS at 1440p. Now in Just Cause 3 on the very high preset, expect to get around 80 FPS at 1080p, and then around 55 FPS at 1440p. These are just stock and on the reference card, so this system will definitely do somewhat better, but this is the only score I could really find for Just Cause 3. As for GTA 5, I did manage to find the system churn 89 FPS at 1080p and 65 FPS at 1440p on the highest settings. I will mention though, I don't think it actually includes filtering or anti-aliasing though, because these frame rates do seem to be pretty high. However, in Crysis 3 I found a great 96 FPS at 1080p and a good but modest 61 FPS at 1440p. This game is still to this day really difficult to run at Ultra even, and so this is a really good result. And that's it. Hopefully this video did help you out, especially if you're looking for a new system at this price range that can play games, edit and livestream really easily. If you are just planning to play games and this system probably isn't for you, in which case there are better options. But a quick update on my upload schedule, my levels are starting in a few weeks, in which case I am going to be directing all of my attention onto those, and therefore taking a short break from making YouTube videos. Notice how I say short, it is generally not going to be very long and it should only be a couple of weeks. These videos do take a really long time to make, mostly down to the graphics and audio, but I just don't want to make videos for the sake of it and start shoveling shit. That's not really what I want to do. I will probably be making a video about this in the upcoming week as we get closer, but I just want to inform you about the changes so you guys know. Hopefully you have enjoyed this video, and if you did, be sure to give it a like, and if you didn't, I'd love to hear why in the comments down below, and subscribe to stay up to date with my content. I'd also really like to hear what components you guys are running in your rig, and so with that over, this has been Proto, adios.